Good morning, everybody. This is Richard with the Hunter Gatherer Society, and I am out on the patio garden this morning. I've been doing some cleanup. It's getting towards the end of November. We're just approaching Thanksgiving, and the summer greens are starting to look a little bit rough. However, the loofah has taken on a couple new branches. I've got a new loofah going, and the mustard greens are doing really well. The basil, the herbs are continuing to do really well. And you can see along the railing here, this is all the Malabar spinach. So it's winding itself through the railing, making a nice kind of just a mesh green wall. And of course an edible green wall, which is really nice. And the intensive Moringa basket that I did has served its purpose. I've harvested it several times. And I'm going to leave some in it, but I am going to thin it back today. We're getting ready, it's cooler now, so we're going to plant some peas and have them run up in one of the corners, little shadier corners. Let them run up to the ceiling and see if we can't get some peas to grow. But I wanted to thin out the Moringa bucket. So what I'm doing is on some of the taller stuff, I'm adding greens to the bucket. So maybe it's collard greens, mustard greens. I've got some kale coming in, which should do really well in this early season. But you can see here, these trees, they've all been trimmed and harvested. Some now are growing back already. The bases on some of these are real thick, and the bases on some of them are very, very thin. And they continue to produce greens. However, I am going to thin them back just a little bit, and then I can add in some additional, maybe cucumbers or peas or some additional spinach, which we use a lot of. We use it a lot in our in the smoothies in the morning. So I wanted to show you something though, because what's cool about the Moringa plant is that, or the Moringa tree, the horseradish tree, is that the whole thing is edible. And as I pull these up, this is the root ball. And you can see this is a pretty small Moringa. There's nice greens on that. I'll keep those. We'll dry those out. We make a powder out of them, like a protein powder. But that is the root ball. What's interesting about the root ball is this is edible. And this is really a strong cross of the horseradish tree, the horseradish flavor and the Moringa flavor. I think it's absolutely wonderful. What I'll do with it is shave it down and then dry it out and then use it as a seasoning. And it's I'm actually going to try adding this to some homemade sauerkraut, and I think that'll be a really nice addition. It'll give it an interesting flavor. So, but that whole ball is edible, and the leaves are. So again, I'm going through and I'm pulling these small trees. Again, more greens, we'll use those. And then a nice root ball that I'll dry out and use for a seasoning. And again, I'm going to leave the larger trees in here because they'll continue to produce. There's a real nice one. They'll continue to produce greens. And the great thing about the Moringa is, if I decide I wanted to put more in there, they'll grow super fast. So I've got a few more seeds left. So I certainly can do that. I could actually even just transplant. I could pick greens off, transplant those cuttings, and they'll regrow again. I really enjoyed this the first time. You can slice it up and just eat it raw as well. It is strong. And so again, my idea with the seasoning, I think it'll work really well in pickles, in homemade krauts, homemade slaws, things like that. Now that one's pretty small, and see how tall the stem is. So it really varies from tree to tree. And this one, a lot of greens, but really not much for a root ball on that one. And I want to keep the Moringa with nice solid bases. ones that have grown real thick, because they can be transplanted very easily. Boy, there's a beauty right there. Look at that one. That's a beaut. So, very nice size, about radish size. A few greens on there we can harvest. This is going to also aerate this bucket. I've been adding leaves and stems when I cut down. For example, I just took out the sweet potato that was on this corner here. It continues to grow, but the older leaves were getting some bug activity underneath them, and it wasn't producing very many young leaves anymore. And so those are the ones that we eat, is the young sweet potato leaves. And so I went ahead. I wanted to reuse the pot, probably for maybe another moringa, or I've got some pepper plants going. I've got a beautiful Japanese eggplant out front that's got several eggplants, so I want to reuse that pot for something a little different. And then I'll replant this trellis. I think I'm going to do more loofah. I really enjoyed the loofah. The loofah leaves are edible. You're not going to eat them raw, but you could use them in a smoothie. You could try. I haven't tried sauteing them, but you could. But we really just wanted the loofahs themselves. And the first one that grew, we let it dry, and we peeled it, and there's the loofah sponge. So again, that was basically a squash. That was the squash that was hanging here in the air in the last video. And now it's a loofah sponge. Plus, I have a ton of seeds came out of this that I'm going to replant and see if I can get the loofahs to grow. So a lot of plans with this corner. I'm trying to focus it on things that grow up, so I may even try to do some cucumbers, something like that. We'll see. The first priority I wanted to, like I said, I wanted to get these moringa roots out of here. Do something fun with those today. I thought about even just pickling them, but I've got plenty of things pickling. I've got a half gallon of pickled eggs going. And I've got some mackerel pickles going, so it'll be interesting to see how those turn out. It's hard to know which ones to pull too, because I've got some of them have done very, very well. Now here's an interesting one. This is a tall one. This one's done really well. Very little greens on it, and very little rootstock. Very little root ball. Kind of interesting. But like I said, it just seems really different, for each one. Now this one, you can see it tried to go long. So you got a small root ball here. This is a very tall one. And that's one thing I've noticed with the moringas, is the taller the pot. The pot doesn't have to be real wide. Matter of fact, my largest moringa here in the corner, the pot's only that big around, but the pot's also that deep, and it likes to run these roots down, and if it thinks it's restricted, it'll stop growing. So deep pots really work well. So on the front patio, what I've done is taken larger, deeper pots, and I planted a large moringa in there, and then I plant like the Japanese eggplant and mustard greens around that, and I use that excess pot for the greens. But then I can grow a larger moringa, which will produce more greens. So anyway, I'm going to continue to pull these out. I'm going to smell the horseradish now. But I'll clear these out, replant some dirt in here, and then we'll get some new plants growing. Like I said, hopefully some peas or something like that. But I just wanted to show you that today. It's an interesting use for the moringa. Again, you can use all parts of the plant. They produce the greens, and then as they get a little older, if you want to thin them out, you can utilize these root balls. And I'll update you later on how that seasoning turns out. But I can tell you I have eaten the roots, and as a horseradish fan, I love them. So anyway, thanks for tuning in. It's a beautiful day on the patio, and just whether it's at home growing or whether it's out in the woods, just remember to get out and do something wild. Have a good day.